Hello and welcome to the People Who Read People podcast with me, Zach Elwood. This is a podcast about human behavior and psychology. You can learn more about it at peoplewhoreadpeople.com. Occasionally on this podcast, I've talked about fake behavior experts. I had an episode about Dr. Jack Brown, an ophthalmologist who transformed himself into a body language expert, or at least a pretend version of one. He plays one on the internet like a lot of people do these days. I hadn't thought about him for a while, but yesterday I got an email from an anonymous account, a Jack Brown fan, who expressed anger at me for my criticisms of Brown. This got me curious to see what Brown was up to, and I saw that he had just gotten a lot of attention due to being featured in an article on rawstory.com titled "Trump is Lying, Expert Finds Deception in Crucial Segment of Ex-President's Speech." It was full of Jack Brown's usual nonsense, confidently saying this minor behavior means this other minor ambiguous behavior means that, his usual bit. Raw Story is a very low-quality news site, so it's not surprising they'd be willing to run with information from such a silly source. I first became familiar with how bad their articles were when I saw them back in 2021 write a piece about a video that many people believed showed a black man being racially harassed, but to me it was pretty obviously fake. And a few days after they wrote that story, it was shown conclusively to be staged. In this episode, I wanted to read Jack Brown's analysis, just because it's interesting to see how much bullshit he's sharing, and anybody who knows a little bit about behavior might find that interesting. If you haven't already listened to it, I'd recommend checking out the episode that I did before that focused on Jack Brown, as it gives a pretty good rundown on why his stuff is so silly and why it's harmful. You might also enjoy a previous episode where I talked with Tim Levine. He talks about why it's so difficult to find reliable indicators of deception. So first, let me give you a few pointers for how you can stay skeptical when it comes to so-called behavior experts. One of the main ways you can tell a behavior bullshitter is that they speak as if the small behavioral body gesture, body language and gesture things they find are highly reliable. Any behavior expert worth their salt will tell you this behavior makes X a bit more likely, but it's far from reliable. These kinds of hedging and nuanced kinds of statements. What Jack Brown is doing is akin to someone promoting a lie detector reading as 100% reliable, saying, "This means that, I know it conclusively." Having highly certain takes about behavior is a major clue that you're dealing with a bullshitter. Also, any behavior expert worth their salt will do some due diligence explaining where their ideas come from, whether it's from studies or personal experience or something else. Jack Brown does not interest himself in that at all. He spouts off all sorts of silly ideas and doesn't tell you where they came from. Some of these ideas I've never heard of and can find nothing about online. Some of these ideas I've asked real behavior academics about and they've never heard of them either. And this is all purposeful, I think, because there is no legitimate science or research behind most of the stuff Jack Brown says. It's akin to the random assortment of ideas you can find in neurolinguistic programming. For example, in this Trump analysis one he just did, he talks about having a confident read of Trump's deception based on how Trump points his index finger. When I emailed a behavior academic about that one, he emailed me back, "He's saying Trump's lying because of his index finger? This guy is getting worse." Another thing behavior bullshitters do is they like to make confident pronouncements, but only about things where they won't be held to account if they're wrong. For example, it's common for Jack Brown and other behavior bullshitters to talk about theoretical things that we'll never know the truth for. For example, like whether Trump is lying about whether he likes or dislikes Nikki Haley. It's also easy to make a confident prediction for a situation where the truth is almost certainly known. For example, a suspected killer's interview footage when it's pretty universally believed that they're guilty. It's easy in those cases to do an analysis where one states that someone is likely guilty. There's just not much to risk there. So people like Jack Brown are pretty smart for sticking to either ambiguous or near certain things. and that's just safer for them and a good strategy. Jack Brown is also interesting because his popularity is related to toxic political polarization. Our fear and anger and contempt, these various negative emotions that polarization leads so many of us to have, make us overly gullible when it comes to information that aligns with our biases and narratives. Jack Brown creates a lot of content where he claims to expose the dastardly nature of Trump and other Republicans. And this gets him a lot of attention from people who already believe those things. That's what's so sad and irresponsible about Brown's work. He's just amplifying people's contempt and rage in a pseudoscientific way. Some of his stuff is extremely irresponsible. For example, his claims that his behavioral analysis of Trump's eyes show that Trump is likely a drug addict, or his claims to have analyzed the January 6th pipe bombing suspect footage and thinks it's likely to be Marjorie Taylor Greene. In my books on polarization, I talk about how extreme polarization gives more power to the more polarized and polarizing. Jack Brown is a good example of that, just as I think Trump is. People who are willing to act in highly insulting, demeaning ways towards the, quote, other side get more attention and gain more power, which all helps create a self-reinforcing cycle of polarization. I also talk about how I think the focus on misinformation is often quite faulty and wrong. I talk about that in my books on polarization. Toxic polarization is the root cause of our misinformation problem. Our contempt and fear lead to increased demand for wrong information. Liberals with contempt and fear towards Republicans and Trump are more likely to fall for Jack Brown's misleading silliness because his stuff aligns with their emotions and narratives. When it comes to Raw Story's decision to publish Jack Brown's thoughts, we can see it as being similar to their decision to publish the story about the fake racial harassment video. Both are catering to the demands of a liberal audience. They know that giving them what they want to see, things that support what they already believe, will get clicks. This is why I think all the efforts and money put into combating misinformation have been, for the most part, a waste. Where there is great demand for misinformation, someone will be creating it. If you're liberal and wonder something like, but who cares about this? We know Trump is a liar, so who cares about the random thoughts of Jack Brown? I think you should care because these are the kinds of things that amplify our divides and help create the very things you're upset by. Trump voters see many people believing this kind of stuff and spreading it around and think, these liberals mock us for being anti-science, but look at the nonsense they believe. This kind of thing. We should all care about bullshit and bad bias information. We should all try to push back on it where and when we find it, even when it's on, quote, our side, because these things seem to be getting worse. Our fear and animosity has led to many people simply not being critical, not caring about the quality of their information. People turn a blind eye to bad things on, quote, their side because they think it doesn't matter compared to the other bigger things they see on the other side. But these are the instincts that push us further into division and further into extreme and divergent beliefs and narratives. Okay, I'm going to read Jack Brown's piece that's on his Substack, which is titled Body Language and Behavior Analysis, number 4760. Wow, he's done almost 5,000 of these. Anyway, it's called Body Language and Behavior Analysis, number 4760. Donald Trump's regarding Nikki Haley at Bedminster press conference. I'm recording this on video and I'm going to screen share this, so if you want to watch that, it'll be on my YouTube. I'm not going to get into debunking everything he says. Again, if you want to read more specific debunking, check out the first Jack Brown piece. I'm more just interested in documenting this nonsense. I think people with any sort of behavioral knowledge will find it amusing and entertaining just to see the wackiness he's spreading. His piece analyzes a 7-second clip of Trump speaking. All right, I'm going to read this piece of his. Yesterday, Donald Trump addressed reporters at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. What follows is a body language analysis of a small but crucial segment of that event. Trump was asked, would you consider having Nikki Haley on the campaign trail for you? Summarizing his answer, Trump said, I'd love to have her support. Yeah, she gave me support, but I'd love to have her go around and campaign. Let's watch this video.
I'd love to have her support. Yeah, she gave me support, but I'd love to have her go around and campaign.
Quick follow-up on the economy.
Okay, That was the video that he's analyzing, just a 7-second clip. Okay, back to what Jack Brown wrote. Note as Trump says, but I'd love to have her, he sweeps his right dominant hand/arm out laterally away from him. This is a classic dismissal gesture, i.e. she's trivial, she's inconsequential, she's bothersome, she's an irritant. But there's also an additional body language signal here. Look carefully at Trump's hand, here at 1/4 speed, as he sweeps it outward. His right index finger is retracted. With respect to body language, the index finger on the dominant hand, here Trump's right hand, is the most powerful digit, signaling the hyperdominance and confidence, and it's profoundly often misused, abused. In contrast, when the index finger, particularly on one's dominant hand, is retracted, the meaning is the opposite: low confidence, low comfort, and deception. Trump is lying. Regarding the tongue jut thing, the index finger thing, I'm not sure what he's talking about there. That is actually a lot more outlandish than a lot of the stuff he writes about. I couldn't find anything online about index fingers or meaning there. I think he's just prone to making stuff up and doesn't get any pushback for the various things he's made up, so I think he just keeps making more strange things up and doesn't care anymore. It's the only thing I can think. Anyway, getting back to Jack Brown's piece. Immediately after Donald Trump says, but I'd love to have her go around and campaign, Trump displays what is known as a tight tongue jut. A tight tongue jut signals the thought emotions of disdain, disgust, and repulsion. Note also Trump closes his eyes as he displays this tongue jut. This eyelid closure, although not a required component of this tight tongue jut, serves to accentuate its intensity, much as an infant pushes away creamed asparagus. Be careful not to confuse a tight tongue jut with a loose tongue jut, a wide-open tongue jut, or a predatory tongue jut, for these body language dynamics indicate completely different thoughts, emotions, and intents. Now, the tongue jut is a thing. You can look up people talking about it. It's known for, being what he said it was, dismissal or distancing. But again, these things are far from being reliable, and there's no real study on these things. So to act as if they're highly reliable is the silly part. Also, I googled predatory tongue jut, and he was the only person I could find using that. Getting back to the idea that he is just kind of making up his own stuff as he goes, and there's no real basis in a lot of this stuff. Getting back to Brown's writing. As Trump finishes his answer, speaking the word campaign, and for about 2 seconds after, Trump shuffles, shifting his weight from side to side. This signals Trump's anxiety about interacting with Haley. He's wishing he hadn't said that. Again, this is what Jack Brown does, takes completely minor things that any one of us giving a talk could be doing and assigns great meaning to it. If you like to think about how bad this stuff is, just imagine all of these things were in some politicians that you like in their delivery and their speech, and imagine Brown reaching for these confident statements based on really ambiguous and common behaviors. Summary, again back to Jack Brown's thing. Summary, Donald Trump is lying when he says he'd love to have Nikki Haley campaign for him. Trump doesn't want to interact with Haley at all. Donald Trump has contempt for, disdain for, and repulsion toward Nikki Haley. He doesn't want her around. She gives Trump anxiety. He's dismissive of her political value. Trump views Haley as inconsequential and as a pest. So that was Jack Brown's piece that got a lot of attention through the Raw Story article. One practical thing you can do to combat this stuff is if you see people sharing takes from Jack Brown online or a similar behavior bullshitter, share this episode or my last episode about Jack Brown with them and urge them to be more skeptical about such things. Urge them to consider how such things are helping create the toxic polarized landscape that gives more strength to polarized and unreasonable leaders and political activists. Okay, thanks for listening. Music by Small Skies.